The best of TomoNews, NASA's mind-blowing announcements edition.
NASA confirms existence of liquid water flowing on Mars. NASA has confirmed that there is liquid water flowing on Mars, which is a potential breakthrough in the quest to search for life beyond Earth. According to NASA scientists, liquid water runs down canyons and crater walls on Mars, leaving dark stains in the terrain. These stains, known as the recurring slope lineae, or RSL, occur when temperatures rise above -10 degrees Fahrenheit. The stains disappear during the cold season. Scientists discovered perchlorate salts on Mars's surface by looking at infrared light waves reflected from the RSL. The salt is crucial in keeping water in liquid form by lowering the freezing point of water. One possible theory of the origin of the flow of water is deliquescence, a process where salt absorbs water from the air. It remains to be seen whether this discovery will prove that life exists on Mars. NASA researchers will now focus on where the water comes from.
NASA discovers Mars had more water than Earth's Arctic Ocean.
For decades, planetary scientists have suspected that ancient Mars was a much warmer, wetter environment than it is today.
New research by NASA indicates that Mars had 5 million cubic miles of water some 4.3 billion years ago. The water is believed not to have been spread evenly over the red planet, but instead collected in the northern plains on the planet's northern hemisphere. Mars's ancient ocean likely covered 19% of its surface, a relative area comparable to the Atlantic Ocean, which occupies 17% of the Earth's surface. Mars had a volume of water 6.5 times greater than what is in its ice caps today, indicating a massive loss of water into space. Researchers found the major difference between ancient and modern Mars is the ratio of heavy and light water molecules. Water's other form less familiar than H2O is called HDO. A deuterium atom replaces a second hydrogen atom, which is a heavy isotope of hydrogen that has a neutron in its nucleus. By comparing the ratio of HDO to H2O in water found on Mars today, water that was trapped in a Mars meteorite dating back to some 4.5 billion years, scientists were able to determine how much water escaped into space. The heavier water molecules discovered demonstrated that Mars had lost 87% of its water to space. Senior Goddard scientist Michael Mumma believes Mars was wetter for a longer period, which suggests it might have been habitable.
Mars's gravity is destroying its own moon. NASA scientists have discovered that grooves found on Phobos, the larger of Mars's two moons, are signs that it is slowly breaking apart. Evidence uncovered in 2008 by the Mars Express probe suggests that Phobos is a pile of rubble encased in a 100-meter thick layer of dusty regolith. Satellite imagery of the moon's surface shows grooves which are believed to be signs of stress forces caused by the gravitational pull between Mars and its moon. These tidal forces are growing stronger because Phobos orbits at 6,000 kilometers from Mars and is being pulled closer to the red planet by about 2 meters every 100 years. Researchers believe this will result in the moon's destruction in about 30 to 50 million years. Scientists have previously thought that the grooves on Phobos were created by the massive impact that formed the Stickney crater.
NASA envisions a floating city above Venus's clouds. NASA envisions a mission to Venus that could eventually result in the construction of a floating city of solar-powered airships above Venus's clouds, where humans could be able to live permanently. Venus's surface, unlike Mars, is nearly unvisitable. It has an atmospheric pressure up to 92 times greater than Earth's, a temperature of 462 degrees Celsius, and an atmosphere mostly made of carbon dioxide with a cloud layer made of sulfuric acid. To make exploration of Venus possible, NASA is thinking of developing a floating city above the planet's clouds at an altitude of about 50 kilometers, where conditions are more similar to Earth. First, NASA would send a robotic scout to determine the lay of the land. It would then send a crew that would spend 30 days floating above the planet in a 130-meter-long Zeppelin-style helium ship. The Zeppelin would be accompanied on its explorations by a smaller, 31-meter robotic solar-powered helium airship. If successful, teams of 2 astronauts would each spend a year floating above the planet, and eventually, in a more distant future, NASA would construct a floating city of airships for a permanent human presence. To develop the mission, NASA would use technology that currently or will soon exist, although NASA is a decade or two away from being able to launch such a mission.
Earth 2.0 discovered by NASA. NASA has announced the discovery of Kepler-452b, the most Earth-like planet that's ever been found. The planet is being named Earth 2.0. Kepler-452b, a planet located 1,400 light-years away from Earth, has been announced as the most Earth-like planet ever found by NASA. The exoplanet orbits around a G-star similar to our Sun in a 385-day year in the constellation Cygnus. Kepler-452b is 5% farther away from its Sun than Earth is to our Sun, but receives the same amount of sunshine as its Sun is 10% larger than ours. Gravity would be about twice as strong on Kepler-452b as it is on Earth. NASA is planning to do a spectroscopic analysis of the exoplanet to gain a better understanding of its atmosphere.
NASA has a plan to save Earth from an asteroid Armageddon. Let's hope it works. NASA announced a plan on Wednesday regarding a future mission to change the trajectory of an asteroid. The mission may have the potential to protect Earth from an impending asteroid impact in the future. NASA's Asteroid Redirect Mission, or ARM, scheduled for the mid-2020s, involves sending a robotic spacecraft to an asteroid passing by Earth. The robot will then do a series of flyby optical surveys of the asteroid's surface. The robot would then land on the asteroid for the boulder collection portion of the mission, which would last about 10 minutes. After pushing away from the asteroid and 3 days of analyzing the boulder, it will then begin the planetary defense portion of the mission. Using the gravitational attraction between the spacecraft and the boulder, they will attempt to deflect the asteroid, a process they call enhanced gravity tractor. It will then take about 6 years for the robot to return to lunar orbit, where astronauts aboard the Orion spacecraft will dock with the robot and further study the boulder. The current concept for the manned portion of ARM involves 2 astronauts and is expected to take about 3.5 weeks.
Dust from the Sahara Desert fertilizes the Amazon forest. The Sahara Desert, the world's largest desert, fertilizes the Amazon rainforest, also the world's largest, according to atmospheric scientist Hongbin Yu, the lead author of a study by NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Each year, millions of tons of phosphorus-laden dust gets blown from the Sahara Desert to the Amazon rainforest by strong winds. About 182 million tons of dust, enough to fill 689,290 semi-trucks, are carried across the Atlantic Ocean, where about 27.7 million tons of dust, enough to fill some 104,908 semi-trucks, fall atop of the Amazon. Phosphorus is essential to the growth of plants, which the Amazon depends on in order to flourish. Most of the Amazon's phosphorus is washed away by rain into streams and out of the forest, but the amount lost, roughly 22,000 tons, is made up for by the dust from the Sahara Desert. The pattern of dust transported annually is highly variable. Scientists believe this variation could have been affected by high rainfall in the Sahel region, a long strip of semi-arid land on the southern border of the Sahara.
Pluto may be home to ice-spewing volcanoes. A probe has found evidence of cryovolcanoes on Pluto's surface, suggesting the dwarf planet may not be as inactive as scientists originally thought. When NASA's New Horizons spacecraft flew past Pluto on July 14th, it scanned the planet's surface and has slowly been transmitting data back to Earth. The latest images show what appear to be 2 ice mountains, each with a depression on top near the bottom of the planet's heart-shaped plain. The volcanoes, informally called Wright Mons and Picard Mons, are about 100 miles across and 2 and 3.5 miles high respectively. Unlike Earth volcanoes that eject lava, the structures on Pluto would likely release an icy slush containing nitrogen, ammonia, and methane. Geological activity on the planet's surface indicates an internal heat source, possibly radioactive elements in its core. With only 20% of New Horizons data downlinked to Earth, scientists need to wait for the remaining pictures and data from the July encounter to confirm cryovolcanism on the dwarf planet.
Zero-gravity coffee cup designed for astronauts. US researchers have developed a 3D printed zero-gravity espresso cup that will be sent to the International Space Station in February. Portland State University's zero-gravity espresso cup is part of NASA's capillary beverage experiment. Capillarity describes the flow of liquid into narrow spaces, without or in opposition to external forces like gravity. The binding force between the water and the inner wall of the narrow tube pulls the edges of the water up, creating a curved meniscus. The surface tension of water inside the tube stretches to reduce the meniscus, which pulls the water farther up into the tube. The process stops when the liquid reaches mechanical equilibrium. The narrow corner of the zero-gravity espresso cup and the mouth of the astronaut form a capillary connection. The surface tension automatically pulls the coffee towards the astronaut in low-gravity environments. The design of the zero-gravity espresso cup debuted in November of last year, and the cups are expected to be tested before flying off into space later this month.
NASA developing inflatable heat shield that could be used for manned missions to Mars. NASA is developing an inflatable heat shield that could one day be used to send astronauts to Mars. Designed by NASA's Langley Research Center, the inflatable shield could help overcome the difficulties of landing on the red planet, where the atmosphere is too thin for modern rockets or parachutes to safely land large spacecraft. The heat shield was inspired by the idea of a stacking ring of toy donuts. Inside the heat shield are inflatable segments covered in thermal blankets. Upon entering the Martian atmosphere, the rings would be inflated with nitrogen. And the heat shield would slow the descent of the spacecraft in an atmosphere that is 100 times thinner than that of the Earth's. NASA plans to test the technology on the next flight of the Antares rocket in 2016. Because the heat shield is inflatable and lightweight, it would free up more room inside a spacecraft. It could also allow for spacecraft large enough to carry humans to land safely on Mars, unlike current heat shields which can only land rovers. The same inflatable technology could also one day be used to help spacecraft land on other planets and moons in the solar system, like Venus and Titan.
Astronauts' hearts become more spherical in space. Results from a study conducted on 12 astronauts show that the heart becomes more rounded when exposed to near zero gravity for extended periods. On Earth, the heart's muscles work against the pull of the planet's gravity to pump blood to the brain and to other parts of the body. The heart loses muscle mass when it doesn't work as hard as microgravity. Ultrasound imaging comparing astronauts' heart before, during, and after spaceflight shows that the heart in space becomes more spherical by a factor of 9.4%. When these astronauts return to Earth after extended stays in outer space, they commonly pass out or become lightheaded when their hearts are unable to adapt to a sudden drop in blood pressure when standing. The study also reports that the astronauts' hearts return to its normal elongated shape shortly after returning to Earth.
NASA says that there's a very high chance a strong earthquake will shake LA. According to a study published in early October by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, there's a whopping 99.9% chance that Los Angeles will experience a serious earthquake in the next 2.5 years. Chances are high for a strong quake on or near two faults in Los Angeles County, the right lateral strike-slip Whittier Fault and the Puente Hills Thrust Fault. The two faults are responsible for the March 28, 2014 La Habra quake, which hit a magnitude of 5.1 and caused considerable damage in the San Gabriel Valley. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory says the La Habra quake caused a surprising amount of damage to local homes and businesses. NASA geophysicists say that within 60 miles from the 2014 quake site, there is a 99% chance that an earthquake measuring 5.0 or greater will occur in the next 3 years. There's also a 35% chance that a 6.3 magnitude quake will occur in the same area in the same time frame. According to CBS Los Angeles, seismologists at the U.S. Geological Survey have questioned these high probabilities. However, it still looks like Los Angeles residents should start investing in earthquake kits and practicing their drills.
SpaceWorks believes the key to space travel may be artificially induced sleep. A NASA-funded study written by aerospace engineering company SpaceWorks says that keeping astronauts unconscious during long flights in space cuts down the equipment and resources needed on the shuttle and also eliminates the negative psychological effects of long hauls in space. According to the NASA-funded study on cryogenic sleep, a human body can be placed in hibernation by simply lowering the body temperature to 93 degrees Fahrenheit. The lowered body temperature causes the body's heart rate and metabolism to decrease. The body will subsist on intravenous feeding tubes that pump the necessary nutrients into the body. Other tubes will drain urine as well as monitor the body. According to mock-ups, a torpor status habitat can hold 6 astronauts at once, and robotic arms will ensure everyone's basic needs are met. So far, humans are only able to maintain stasis for 14 days, although the trip from Earth to Mars is expected to take up to 9 months, or about 274 days. NASA has declined to fund the second stage of the research, though, and SpaceWorks, citing its potential therapeutic benefits, is now looking into using the technology here on Earth.
NASA scientists say that an unusually large and fast asteroid will narrowly pass Earth. Scientists at NASA's Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii say that an unusually large and fast asteroid will fly by Earth this Halloween. The asteroid, named 2015 TB145, came as a surprise to scientists who only spotted the asteroid less than 2 weeks ago. Asteroid 2015 TB145 measures up to 2,000 feet long in diameter, or the length of approximately 5.5 football fields. The asteroid's flyby is expected to happen on October 31st this year, when it will pass within 310,000 miles from Earth. That distance is within 1.3 lunar distances of Earth, dangerously close for an asteroid of that size. Scientists say that the asteroid will streak by Earth at an unusually high velocity of nearly 78,000 miles per hour. NASA says that if an asteroid of this size and velocity was to hit Earth, it would wreak devastating havoc on our planet, but rest assured this will not be the case, at least this time around. Scientists say the next time any celestial object this large will pass by Earth will be in 2027, when the mile-wide AN-10 asteroid passes by within 1 lunar distance away.
Huge asteroid to skim past Earth. A huge asteroid called 2014 YB35 is set to skim past Earth on Friday. Asteroid 2014 YB35 is believed to be 1,000 meters wide, the same as the height of the Kingdom Tower currently under construction in Saudi Arabia. The asteroid is set to approach Earth on Friday. Traveling at more than 37,000 kilometers per hour, the asteroid will barely miss Earth, according to a trajectory map released by NASA. At its closest point, it will be 2.8 million miles away from Earth, about 12 times the distance between Earth and the Moon. It's estimated that a collision with the asteroid would result in an explosive force equivalent to 15,000 megatons of TNT, which would trigger earthquakes and tsunamis and cause destruction on a global scale. NASA is closely monitoring the passage of asteroid 2014 YB35 in the hopes of obtaining data about its composition and size.
Real-life Death Star seen destroying a solar system. A dying star is ripping apart planets in its own solar system, according to a team of astronomers who published a paper in the journal Nature. The zombie star, called WD1145+017, is a white dwarf in the constellation Virgo. Stars shine because they convert hydrogen into helium through a process known as nuclear fusion. After a regular star uses up its nuclear fuel, it expands and turns into a red giant. Red giants are hot enough to convert helium into carbon. However, when helium fuel exhausts, red giants start to contract and become more compact, eventually turning into a white dwarf, a leftover of the star's inner core. A white dwarf is extremely dense. Its gravitational pull is so enormous that it can tear an orbiting planet apart. A star's orbit changes when its mass changes. The change in a dying star's orbit may kick another planet into orbiting closer around the white dwarf. When the planet orbits closer than the habitable zone, it can be disintegrated by the gravitational pull of the white dwarf. The white dwarf was spotted by NASA's Kepler Space Telescope as part of the spacecraft's K2 mission.
NASA captures sun eruption sending solar material into space. This 4-hour time-lapse video released by NASA shows a solar eruption that grows into a coronal mass ejection. The footage was taken on June 18th by the Solar Dynamics Observatory. According to NASA, the eruption sent a huge cloud of coronal solar material out into space. The Solar Dynamic Observatory, or SDO, was launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida on February 11, 2010. The mission's goal is to study space weather and how it is created by changing solar activity, as well as measuring the magnetic field, the plasma of the solar corona, and how the sun creates the ionospheres of the planets in our solar system. NASA aims to use the SDO to understand solar activity like coronal mass ejections and how they influence life on Earth. Technological systems like satellites and electrical transmissions can be disrupted by solar activity, sometimes causing massive power outages. This is the first mission for NASA's Living with a Star program. The SDO is a 4.5-meter high spacecraft, measuring more than 2 meters on each side and weighing 3,100 kilograms with fuel. It takes almost continuous observations as it orbits the Sun.